My name is Ramona Banks, and I built my curriculum on the FAA Private Pilot Certificate course. I've been flying for a little over 15 years, and one of my aviation goals is to become a certified flight instructor, or a CFI. The Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, changed the requirements in the last few years, and with this change started pushing scenario-based training. The FAA found students could answer questions from memory, but could not tell when the knowledge or skills would be used in an actual flight. From the FAA, the new Airman Certificate Standard, the ACS, now requires that certain tasks such as operating as pilot in command, aircraft worthiness, and operative equipment, weather, and the fuel reserves are to be evaluated in a scenario-based format. The ACS goes on to say that scenarios should require the applicants to apply and/or correlate knowledge, experience, and information to the circumstance of the given scenario. I wanted my curriculum to include more scenario-based training than the training I took when I received my pilot's license. When a student pilot takes the exam to get their pilot certificate, there are two parts: the written test and the practical test. The practical test is broken into two parts: the oral exam and the flight exam. My curriculum covers just the oral exam part of the practical test. As you can see, here are the oral exam part of the test: pilot qualification and aircraft airworthiness requirements, weather information, cross-country flight planning, national airspace systems, aircraft performance and limitations, and human factors. In developing curriculum, it is important to understand the process that will be trained. A process analysis will help curriculum developers have a better understanding of the training needs. In my process analysis, I covered the ADDIE model used by the Army curriculum development process. In the ADDIE process, the analysis phase covers three types of analysis: needs analysis, mission analysis, and outcomes analysis. Needs analysis will be covered later in the presentation. Mission analysis reviews a mission and the required tasks for the mission. And outcome analysis identifies a successful completion of the task. An analysis of the content should address whether the content meets the current or long-term needs of the student, along with meeting any industrial or educational standards. The Airman Certificate Standard, ACS, is a standard the FAA uses to test student pilots. The ACS is available for free to students, instructors, and the designated pilot examiner on the FAA website. My curriculum was built to meet the ACS standards. Task analysis is the analysis of how a task is accomplished. Curriculum then is created to teach the identified task. I created my task list from the June 2018 FAA Private Pilots Airman Certificate Standard, and it covers the following: pre-flight preparation, pilot qualification and aircraft worthiness requirements, weather information, cross-country flight planning, national airspace system, aircraft performance and limitation, and human factors. But I also pulled in the tasks, three other tasks from parts of the ACS. Pre-flight procedures, which included pre-flight assessment, flight deck management, engine starting, taxiing, and before takeoff checklist. Airport base operations, which included communications and traffic patterns. Takeoff, landing, and go-arounds, which included normal takeoff and climb, normal approach and landing, go-around, and rejected landings. Outcome describes in observable and measurable terms what a student is able to do as a result of completing a course. One of my outcomes for this class is students will be able to pass the oral portion of the private pilot's practical exam. Goals are broad, general statement of what we want our students to learn. A goal must be realistic and achievable, but not usually measurable. So one of my goals were students will be able to identify and locate both the pilot qualification and the airplane airworthiness requirements. Objectives are specific learning outcomes, which is derived from the course goal. A goal usually have multiple course objectives. All objectives should be measurable. Here are two of my objectives from my course. During a flight test, the student pilot will be able to show their required flight documents. And during a flight check, the student pilot will be able to locate and describe the airworthiness document for the airplane. Outcomes, goals, and objectives help guide the building of the training material. My course had 6 units. Here are each unit listed with a essential question. The pilot qualification and aircraft airworthiness requirement, and its question was, what documentation is required for both the pilot and the aircraft? Next unit was weather information. What weather sources are allowed by the FAA to be used by pilots? The third unit is cross-country flight planning. What information is required for a cross-country flight? Fourth unit was National Airspace System. What is the basic visual flight rule, weather minimums when flying in a different class of airspace? Aircraft performance and limitations. What affects the aircraft performance during takeoff and landing? And the last was human factors. What are the human factors associated with flying? The student will be assigned reading, and the ground school instructor will lecture on the assigned subject. Group discussions will be used to cover material such as aviation weather. Case study will be used to teach flight safety, and demonstrations will be used when learning about navigation aids, navigational instruments, and the use of the E6B flight computer. To study for the oral portion of the practical test, the certified flight instructor will use project, role-playing, case study, and lecturing. A student will be assigned projects such as planning a flight. Role-playing along with case studies will be used by the certified flight instructor to place the student in different flight situations, which will then be discussed. Instructors will use lectures to cover material. Flight demonstration will be the primary strategy used for the flight test portion of the test, with briefings before and after each flight. Flight training cannot put a student in every situation they may face once they are on their own. So this simulation role-playing is a good way to cover these situations. Not all instructors have access to flight simulators, but they are being used more often in private pilot flight training. They allow for emergency procedures to be practiced in safe environments. Case studies and role-playing can help by exploring different situations that might occur during flight and the safest way to handle the situation. It is easy to see how the part of the curriculum building leads to the next. The course I built can be used by certified flight instructors, CFIs, to help their students pass the oral exam, or students who need just a little extra training before their oral exam. One thing I learned was coming up with new ways to teach aviation was not easy. As I talked to pilots that had trained years before I started my training, I learned that training was about the same. There might be new instruments or avionics to learn, but the basics were the same. Aviate, navigate, and communicate. This is the order that we teach our pilots to fly it. Though the FAA has asked for CFIs to start using scenario-based training, many of the CFIs had already been using this training. Thank you.